Alrighty, everybody. So, we should have a 2D platformer with our character who can run around, and we're going to introduce some basic animations. In some previous videos, we created some very basic animations using a resource that I had linked, and I'm just going to give this character a running animation just using that resource. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to open that resource up. It's linked on your Schoology page. I'm going to make some changes to this resource because unfortunately it's not perfect right now. I'm going to add 2 frames to this animation. I'm going to copy our idle pose into those 2 new frames because we'll be using those later. And then I'm going to delete our idle pose out of every other frame. And unfortunately for the idle frame, I also just need to go into each of the... Oh, no, we're perfect. We're good. That's all we need to do. Okay, so now I have this running animation. And I have 2 frames at the end of my running animation, which is just his idle pose. Those idle animations we'll use later, potentially. We're going to save this. Actually, we're going to export this, which is the picture of the little mountains here. We're going to export this as a sprite sheet. A sprite sheet is the format that Unity is going to use to turn this file into an amazing animation. Let's name it player running and idle animation in the sprite information in the save menu. And then let's download the sprite sheet. Oh, it just saves as new Pisco 1. Okay, I will rename this to player running animation. And we're going to use this animation in Unity right now. So I'm going to go to Unity. And I'm going to... I will go to my art folder. And I will drag in this sprite sheet that we made. And the name didn't save, so I might have to rename it. The system cannot find the file. Okay, I renamed it, so now I can't find the file. Okay, so where did I save this? So let's... Show an Explorer, downloads, player running animation. Okay, so we have it in here now. Now, why are the idle poses out of order? I really need these to be at the end. Let me go look if I could resave this with it working. This should be frames 9 and 10. Okay, let's just rename it manually. We could fix that. I'm just going to go into this file. And if I... Oh, where's the slicer? Oh my gosh. I don't know why the... Okay, so here's this. This is called 6. This is called 9. I'm going to click on this frame. So I open this up. This is something I didn't want to do. It should have been done by default. I'm going to open this up. I'm going to go to the editor. And this one should be at the end. I'm just going to call it 10. So we have frames. Damn it. I don't know if my frames are playing in order. That's okay. We're not going to reorder frames right now. We're just going to take whatever it gives us. I'm going to save that. I have my idle poses at the end. Okay. We're going to start creating 2 animations. I'm going to start by selecting all of these. So I'm holding shift and I'm clicking all my run animations and I'm dragging them in. And I'm going to save this new animation. I'll save it as player running animation. And I will also drag in these 2. And I will call this the player idle animation. That creates these 2 animation objects and these 2 animation these are animation clips, these 2. These 2 triangles are the 2 animation clips. So if I was to click a character and play that animation clip, I can see the animation. So I can click on these characters and I can play their animations. And I can see the idle pose and I can see the running pose. Now what would be great is if we could lower the frame rate on these, but we have the idle pose, we have the running pose. I'm actually going to make a new folder. I'm going to right click in assets and I'm going to create a folder for animations. And I'm going to drag all these animations I made and all these animation controllers into the animations folder. Now we actually don't need these two guys. I just made them just because it makes it easier for me. Okay, now we have my player. His image is up here in his sprite renderer. I'm going to replace his default image with a idle image, and I'm noticing that his image is too small. I'm going to go to this thing that I downloaded, this sprite sheet, and I'm going to decrease the pixels per unit, which will make him bigger. I'm going to try 32. That's too small. I'm going to click the sheet again. I'm going to try 16 pixels per unit, and that should be a good size. Yeah, that's fine. So 16 pixels per unit. And I'm going to change the filter mode to point no filter. That'll make him less blurry. Okay. So now I have my player idle. He doesn't have any animations yet, though. So I'm going to go to his animations, and I'm going to drag in an animation controller. I'm going to delete this animation controller. I'm going to rename this animation controller. I only need one. I'm going to name this player. And I'm going to put this animation controller into my player. And this animator is going to be what animates our player. Let's click into our animator and see how it works. So our animator works by starting. It's going to start with our player running animation. That's fine. Let's drag in our idle animation. And we need to right click and make transitions going from running to idle and from idle to running. Right click, I made transition, make transition. Now that I did a make transition, I can click on these two transitions. They're these little triangles. And from running to idle, I need a condition. I'm going to say that I should go from my running animation to my idle animation if my speed is less than, 0.1. To do that, I need to add a parameter to this controller. So in the animator, at the top, there's a parameters. We need to click plus. We're going to add a float. That's a number that has a decimal point. I'm going to call it speed. And I'm going to say speed is 0 by default. I'm going to say the player will start idling if the speed is less than 0.01. And then I'm going to transition the other way. He'll start running if the speed is greater than 0.01. Okay, so now we have this animation controller working. But by default, our player is just going to be running, and the animator doesn't actually have this speed condition ever changing. So in our game, it's my belief that my player will just always run in place, which is not ideal. Let's see what happens, though. So it looks like he's idling. So he transitioned to idle. It seems weird. Why would he transition to idle? Let's look at his controller again. Player, animation controller, player running. It should loop. Player running animation to player idle animation. If the speed is less than 0.01, but speed is always going to be 0 because speed is never changing. So he should always transition to idle. Oh yeah, duh. So he'll just be idling. Okay, so speed is always 0. We're not setting our speed. So speed is always going to be 0. So let's change our speed. So the way we're going to change our speed is we need to open our code, and we need to create in our code a reference to this animator game object. So we're going to say public so that we can reference it, so we can drag a reference in from outside the code. Animator is the name of the component. We need a reference to our animator component. I just called it a game object. The animator is not a game object. It is a component inside of the player game object. We need a reference to the animator component. We'll name that reference animator. Now, we could write a code in the update. We could say animator dot set float speed to the absolute value of our rigid body's linear velocity in the x direction. This means that our speed is going to be equal to how fast we're moving. Now I think my running animation is going to pretty much work. We're going to need one more change after this. I'm going to Control S to save my code. The code is on screen. Pause the video. Copy down public animator, and copy down. It won't let me zoom in, but this says animator dot set float speed in parentheses. So set float and then a parentheses and then quotation marks and then speed end quotation marks, comma, mathf dot abs, capital A, parentheses, rb dot linear velocity dot x. Close parentheses, semicolon. If you can't see it, that's the line. I gotta move on. So now that we have this code working, I think we're gonna be setting our speed of our animator. So I could press play and my animation should work. But wait, there's gonna be a problem. We just added a reference to our animator, but my game's gonna crash. Let's check my console and see what this error says. The variable animator has not been assigned. I never set my reference. I need to tell my player that the animator he should be looking at in his code, right here, animator is none. I need to drag my player into the animator so he knows to look at his own animator. We've done stuff like that before. Now he has a reference to his animator component. Now he'll be able to set the speed of his animator component. So he'll start idle. He's idling, and now when I run, I have a running animation. And when I stop running, I stop running. Now there is another problem. I'm always running one direction. We need to add 2 more lines of code to change his renderer to make it so if I'm running this way, his renderer flips his sprite. Flip X. So when I'm running to the right, it should be normal. When I run to the left, my X should flip. My X should flip when I'm running this way. My X should be not flipped when I'm running this way. We need 1 more line of code to do that, and we actually need a reference to the renderer. So at the top, we're going to add a public sprite renderer. This will give our code a reference to that component so that we can write code that affects this component. And then in the update, we're going to tell the sprite renderer what to do. Sprite renderer.flipX, so the component is sprite renderer. The part of the component, the property that we're affecting is flipX, and we're going to set flipX, which can either be true or not true, to a conditional statement, a statement that says, a Boolean statement, if you know your vocab, a statement that's true or false. This statement is true if our linear velocity is less than 0. If we're negative, we should flip our X. That means that if we're greater than 0, we should not flip our X. This line of code will work. We will now flip our X if our sprite renderer sees that we're moving to the left. It'll flip the X of our sprite, which will make us face the correct way. And that is it for this lesson. We're totally done. There's no more errors that are going to come up right now when I press play. We're not going to hit the same error that we've seen 100 times before in this class because we checked everything and everything's working. And wait, did we forget something? Oh, my game's crashing again. Let's see why. The variable sprite render in the player controller has not been assigned. Oh, in my console, I get this error when I don't drag in a reference to my script. I'm going to drag my player into the script, and now I have a reference to my sprite renderer. Now when I press play, lucky us, everything will actually work. So it starts with a running animation, which is not good, but we can fix that another day. So when I run to the right, he runs right. When I run to the left, he runs left. You guys can create idle animations. You guys can create jumping animations. I don't have a jumping animation. This would be, if my vertical direction, the same way we did left and right, you would do up and down for the jumping animation. So you could say, if you're moving up at a certain speed or down at a certain speed, or if you press spacebar, we can transition to jumping. You guys can create attack animations. Maybe you add an attack to the game. He might need an attack animation. Anything like that. You guys can start adding animations as you see fit. That's it. That is the video. If you did everything we did in this video, then you have a working running animation. Congratulations.